My name is Eva Morales. I'm 42. Up until yesterday, I held the role of senior strategy consultant at Hartley and Knox, a boutique management firm based in Chicago. I dedicated 11 years of my life to that company, weathering economic downturns, leadership turnovers, mergers, and complete brand overhauls. I wasn't just an employee. I was one of the key players, the person they brought in when a deal teetered on the edge, the one who stepped in when clients were on the verge of walking away. Yesterday morning, I walked into the conference room anticipating a handshake, maybe even a quiet toast for the win I'd just pulled off. Instead, I saw Dean Harper, my boss, already seated at the head of the long glass table. In front of him, a slim white folder was laid out with deliberate care. "Eva," he said as he stood. His voice was unusually soft, gentle in that uncomfortable way people speak at memorial services. "Thanks for coming in early. Just days ago, I salvaged a $20 million contract. 3 weeks of red-eye flights between Dallas and San Francisco, late-night calls, and endless negotiations had finally paid off. A major client was ready to walk after a supply chain crisis derailed their expansion. I didn't just close the deal. I kept the relationship alive. Everyone knew it. So when I sat across from Dean and noticed his eyes avoiding mine, I felt it, that shift in atmosphere. Subtle, but unmistakable. Something was off. He folded his hands. "You've done excellent work, but the company is moving in a new direction. We're looking for fresh ideas, younger energy." At first, I didn't register what he meant. "Excuse me?" I replied, not because I hadn't heard him, but because the words felt so scripted, like something lifted from a corporate training manual. Dean nudged the folder toward me. "There's a restructuring. New leadership wants to streamline operations, faster growth, leaner teams. You've been invaluable, Eva. But this is where your chapter ends." I opened the folder slowly. The legal language stared back. Termination agreement, severance details, a non-disparagement clause. I looked up. "Effective immediately?" He nodded. "You'll still receive your bonus for this quarter. And we're committed to making this a respectful transition." Respectful. As if pulling the rug out from under someone after 11 loyal years was anything close to respectful. But I didn't cry. I didn't lash out or demand an explanation. I simply smiled, a controlled, professional smile. "I understand," I said, extending my hand across the table. Dean looked almost grateful as he shook it, clearly bracing for a scene I never gave him. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. Because what hit me in that moment wasn't fury, it was something cooler and sharper. A crystal-clear realization. The kind that comes when the illusion finally crumbles. He didn't know. Not yet. He had no clue what tomorrow had in store. Back at my office, I packed slowly and deliberately. Not because I needed the time, but because I wanted it. I wanted to see the way people looked at me, confused rather than sympathetic. No one had been informed yet. Most assumed I was heading to another client meeting. Some waved casually. Only one person stopped to ask. "Taking some time off?" my assistant Priya asked, eyeing the box in my arms. "Something like that," I replied. I paused by the window where I had spent countless late nights. From this vantage point, the lake shimmered, the skyline stretched endlessly, and construction cranes clawed at the sky, still erecting buildings no one truly needed. I'd worked through blizzards and birthdays, Thanksgiving weekends, and anniversaries. All for what? Loyalty. Dedication. Apparently, qualities no longer valued at Hartley and Knox. I glanced at the whiteboard in my office before walking out, still covered with notes from my recent call with Cascade Systems, our most lucrative client. The same client I had just kept from leaving, using a strategy Dean had dismissed as too bold. The same client who had called 2 nights ago to thank me and mentioned flying into Chicago next week to discuss expanding the contract. He didn't know I was gone yet. And that gave me power. I didn't make a speech or wave goodbye. No awkward farewell party or card. Just a quiet exit and a phone full of contacts I had earned the hard way. That night, back home, I poured myself a glass of wine and flipped open my laptop. I double-checked my contract. The non-compete clause was there, but it was fairly limited, 6 months, and only enforceable if I left voluntarily. Dean had signed my termination papers, which made all the difference. Next, I opened my personal files, copies of the presentations, the notes, the late-night work I'd put in to save that $20 million deal. These weren't company assets. They were my strategies, my ideas, all of them dismissed until they delivered results. Then I checked my inbox. And there it was, a message from the VP of Operations at Cascade Systems. Looking forward to meeting with you next week, Eva. I'd like to discuss long-term alignment. You've been key to our success. Thanks again. I didn't respond. Not yet. I had more important things to do, like making tomorrow unforgettable. The next morning, I woke up ahead of my alarm, even though I hadn't set one. Old habits die hard. My body still expected a check-in, a commute, a packed calendar of calls. But now, everything was quiet. My home felt different, not like a cage, but like a blank slate. I brewed my coffee slowly, savoring the process for the first time in years. There was no rush. No power suit, no laptop bag by the door, no endless notifications pinging from Slack. Just me, the kitchen window, and a phone that hadn't stopped buzzing since I walked out of the office the day before. I scrolled through the messages. 5 LinkedIn notifications from former colleagues. 2 emails from clients, one of them Cascade. And a voicemail from Julia, one of our partner liaisons. Heard something happened. Please call when you can. They were confused. Firing someone who just saved your largest account didn't add up. Not unless you didn't know the whole story. I sat down with my notebook, the one I never left behind at the office. The one that contained every client nuance, every side conversation, every internal promise no one else bothered to write down. Over the course of 11 years, I hadn't just managed accounts. I'd built trust. I knew which VPs had kids applying to college, which procurement directors had vendor allergies, who preferred Mondays for meetings, and who wanted updates on Thursdays. I wasn't just a consultant. I was the glue that held everything together. And they had just discarded me, as easily as tossing aside a useless paperclip. They thought my worth ended with the termination letter Dean handed me. They were wrong. At exactly 9 a.m., I called Cascade Systems. Not the main line or the customer service number. I dialed the personal cell of Alex Garner, the VP who had reached out about next week's meeting. He picked up after the second ring. Eva, hey, are we still on for Tuesday? That's when the door swung open. I actually wanted to discuss that, I said, keeping my voice even. As of yesterday, I'm no longer with Hartley and Knox. A long silence. You could almost hear his eyebrows raise. Wait, what? I was let go, I replied, maintaining a neutral tone. The firm's shifting focus, leaning toward younger talent and new direction. I just thought you should hear it directly from me. That's insane, he said. You're the only reason we didn't walk away from that deal last month. You saved everything. I appreciate that, Alex, I said. Really? So, what happens now? Who's taking over your accounts? I'm sure Dean will reach out. Or maybe someone from the new team. But I don't have any visibility into that at this point. Another pause. Eva, let me ask you something. Are you staying in the consulting world? Yes, I answered without hesitation. Just not sure exactly where yet. I need to talk to you. Not about Tuesday's meeting, about something bigger. Something long-term. Can you meet today? A smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. Absolutely. We met at a quiet bistro in the West Loop. No suits. No PowerPoint slides. Just 2 people with too many unsaid things between them. He wasted no time. We've been looking at bringing some of our strategic work in-house, Alex said. Consulting fees are through the roof, and honestly, you're the only person we've consistently trusted at Hartley and Knox. Have you ever thought about going independent? That word lingered between us. Independent. For over a decade, I'd operated like a one-woman operation under someone else's brand. I created systems, sealed deals, and nurtured relationships they couldn't replicate. And yet, they let me go because I didn't fit their idea of new energy. I locked eyes with Alex. If I decided to go independent, would Cascade consider a direct advisory agreement with me? Without hesitation, he replied, draft something. Let's make it official. That night, I opened my laptop and began building something I hadn't even considered in years. My own brand, my own offering, my own identity beyond the corporate title. I registered an LLC, scheduled a meeting with a small business attorney I'd met years ago through a client. He owed me a favor. I called Priya, my former assistant, to see if she'd be open to part-time freelance work. Her response was instant. Just say when. By 9 p.m., I had a name, a legal structure, and a plan. I wasn't just going to bounce back. I was going to build something Dean would never grasp. What I had wasn't tied to Hartley and Knox's logo or their flashy pitch decks. It was me, my reputation, my results, my clients. They didn't follow PowerPoint slides or brand guidelines. They followed trust. And that trust would soon be in motion, contract by contract, name by name. The next morning, the sunlight came through the windows with a sharp clarity, bold and unapologetic. I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee and a notepad filled with names. Not just names, but relationships, connections forged through years of late-night calls, crisis management, and problem-solving that had nothing to do with hourly fees. I wasn't in a rush. Every call mattered. Each one had to feel intentional, not desperate. My first call wasn't to a client. It was to someone who knew how the business worked. A former mentor, now a friend. Eva, Roberta Sanchez said, her voice warm yet alert. I heard the news. Dean's making some bold moves. That's one way to put it, I replied. He let me go. Said the firm needs younger energy. There was a pause. He actually said that? Word for word. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yep. She exhaled. Wow. You're kidding. Nope. Then he's just handed you a gift. Do you realize that? I did. I'm starting my own thing, I told her. Nothing too flashy yet, but Cascade's already interested. They want me as their first client. Roberta laughed. Of course they do. You practically rebuilt their Western division. What do you need from me? Advice. And, eventually, a referral. But for now, just this. If people ask where I've landed, what should I say? She didn't hesitate. I'd say Hartley and Knox just lit the match that's going to burn their client list down, she said. I'll vouch for you, Eva. Anytime, anywhere. Her words grounded me. They reminded me that my career had never been built on office politics or handouts. It had been built on results and trust. I ended the call, took a steadying breath, and dialed my first client. It was Darren McBride from Easton Data Partners. I'd managed their account for 7 years, handled their first merger, guided them through a major cybersecurity incident, and helped them expand into European markets. He picked up after 3 rings. Ava, I was just about to call you. We've got that international call on Tuesday. Still good to go? I swallowed hard. Actually, that's what I'm calling about. I'm no longer with Hartley and Knox. There was a long silence. Wait, what? Effective 2 days ago. The company's shifting direction and they let me go. Darren sounded stunned. Eva, that's crazy. You've been our point of contact for everything. You know our infrastructure better than anyone. I wanted to let you know personally before the company reached out. I don't know who will be taking over your account. Whoever it is, they won't have the experience you have. This is going to be a problem. I paused. There is one thing I can tell you, I added. I'm launching a boutique consultancy. Personal, selective, and tailored. You taking on clients? Only those I truly believe in. He didn't hesitate. Send me a proposal by tomorrow. By the end of the day, I'd made 6 more calls, each one a calculated conversation. Each one was met with the same reactions. Confusion, concern, and eventually interest. They weren't just surprised I was gone. They were shocked that the firm hadn't planned ahead, because there was no plan. Hartley and Knox hadn't just removed me from projects. They'd severed the very relationships those projects relied on. Now, quietly, I was reclaiming what they had let slip away. Later that evening, a text from Priya, my former assistant, lit up my phone. Priya. Internal chaos. Julia says Dean's scrambling. 2 clients already asked for new account managers. 1 is reconsidering the partnership. I didn't respond. I just sat there, letting the message sink in. Things were moving faster than I'd expected. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened my laptop once again. I had a logo designer on Fiverr working on a simple brand identity. I didn't need anything too elaborate, just something clean, professional, and trustworthy. Eva Morales Consulting, simple, yet elegant and direct. I scheduled a meeting, drafted my first NDA, and customized a service proposal template. This wasn't about collecting clients, it was about building something real. Something that would last. When I opened my inbox, a message from Alex Garner at Cascade Systems caught my attention sooner than I anticipated. Subject: Your departure. From Alex Garner, Cascade Systems. Message: Eva just spoke with Dean. He told me Alicia will be our new contact. I told him we need to think about that. Let's discuss tomorrow. I read the message twice. Alicia, the 28-year-old junior consultant Dean had referred to as a fresh perspective. The one I had trained through her first client kickoff. Dean had no idea what he had just set in motion. Tomorrow, I'd make it clear. By Thursday morning, the fallout had already begun. 2 voicemails. For emails. 1 cryptic LinkedIn message from a colleague still at Hartley and Knox. Message: Whatever you did, they're panicking. You okay? I was more than okay. Cascade Systems had placed a hold on all active deliverables. Easton Data had already signed a preliminary letter of intent with me. 2 smaller firms, clients I hadn't even reached out to yet, had contacted me, saying they preferred to work with someone they trusted. This wasn't an uprising. It was quiet, deliberate erosion, one small shift at a time. And it was just the beginning. At 10 a.m., I met Alex Garner from Cascade at their downtown office. Not as a vendor, not as a representative of Hartley and Knox, but as myself. He led me into a private conference room, closed the door behind us, and folded his arms. So, they really fired you? I nodded. After everything you did with the San Diego expansion? Apparently, I didn't fit with the firm's new direction, I said calmly. Alex shook his head in disbelief and sat down across from me. They sent us Alicia. She didn't even know our contract terms. She showed up with the wrong presentation and called our COO Andrew. His name is Anthony. I almost flinched. That was the kind of error you couldn't recover from. I'm not here to sell you anything, Alex, I said. I just wanted to be transparent. I've started something new, small, hands-on, focused on legacy clients who value strategy over flash. He leaned forward. How soon can you start? By noon, we'd outlined the structure of a 6-month advisory contract. Nothing over the top, just a smooth transition from the firm into something simpler, more direct. They wanted continuity. I was offering them something free from red tape, quick to implement, and with the same level of attention they had grown accustomed to. As I stepped out of the building, Alex caught me at the door. You know this is going to stir things up. I'm aware, I said. But I didn't start this mess. I'm just responding to it. He nodded firmly. For what it's worth, they really underestimated you. That was something I already knew. Back at home, I opened my laptop to find 2 new messages. One was from Hartley and Knox's legal team. Subject: Reminder regarding confidential information. Please be reminded that your employment agreement contains confidentiality provisions. Any outreach to current clients must adhere to those terms. It was vague, deliberately so. A thinly veiled attempt at intimidation. The second message was from Alicia. Subject: Quick question. Hey Eva, I was wondering if you remember what document you used for Cascade's quarterly benchmarking? I couldn't find it on the shared drive. Appreciate any help. I stared at the message. This wasn't her fault, not really. She was thrown into a role she wasn't prepared for, all for the sake of fresh energy. Still, I didn't respond. There was nothing I could say that wouldn't turn into a lesson someone else should have taught her. I closed my inbox and texted Priya instead. Text: Priya, let's get ready for 2 new client onboardings this week. I'll loop you in with Cascade and Easton Data tomorrow. Priya. On it. Also heard from Julia again. Dean's losing it. Clients are demanding meetings. COO asked why your name isn't on any internal planning decks anymore. I smiled. That question was going to linger for a long time. Later that afternoon, I walked through Lincoln Park to clear my mind. The lake was peaceful, and the city buzzed around me, people in their routines, unaware that a small shift was reverberating through a high-rise office not far from here. At 4:17 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Eva Morales, I answered. A pause, then. Eva, it's Gerald Mercer, COO at Hartley and Knox. I raised an eyebrow. Hi, Gerald. What can I do for you? We've had some client issues. A few transitions aren't going as smoothly as we'd hoped. I wanted to see if you'd be open to consulting, helping with the handoffs for a few weeks. I kept my tone neutral. Unfortunately, I'm already under contract with 2 former clients. It wouldn't be appropriate. Eva, we don't want this to escalate. It won't, as long as the firm respects my termination and my rights under the agreement we both signed. Another pause. Right, he said finally. Well, thank you for your time. I hung up and sat on a bench, overlooking the lake. That was their first attempt to regain control, a shot across the bow. What they didn't realize was this. I hadn't burned any bridges. I'd just built a better one, and the clients were already crossing it. By Friday morning, I had 4 clients: Cascade Systems, Easton Data, Langford and Ree, and now Beaksley Bio. None of them had been solicited. None had been pressured. All had reached out after hearing the same question echoed across the industry. What happened to Eva Morales? I hadn't needed to sell myself. I had simply answered when they called, calmly, honestly, professionally. I'm no longer with Hartley and Knox. I've started a consulting firm. Yes, I'm open to continuing our work independently. Simple truths. But those truths were causing turmoil within Hartley and Knox. That morning, Priya forwarded another message from Julia. Subject: Internal status. Dean called an emergency meeting this morning. At least 5 clients have paused renewals or asked for new points of contact. Legal is trying to figure out if they can enforce the non-solicit clause, but since you were terminated, there's a lot of confusion. The COO isn't happy. Neither is the board. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled. I wasn't out to destroy the firm. I wasn't trying to make waves. But I wasn't going to apologize for being the one thing they underestimated the most. Indispensable. At 11:30 a.m., I got a calendar invite from Dean Harper. Subject: Let's talk. Just us. Time: 3 p.m. Location: Hartley and Knox, Conference Room 6B. The nerve. I didn't accept. I didn't decline. Instead, I spent the next hour combing through my termination letter. There it was again, clear as day. The company waives any non-compete enforcement in the event of involuntary termination. They signed it. They filed it. They just hadn't bothered to read it carefully. At 1:12 p.m., my phone rang. It was Alex from Cascade. Hey, just a heads up, he said. Dean reached out this morning. He said you were causing confusion and that our contract might put us at risk legally. I was taken aback. He really said that? Yep. I asked him to put it in writing. He backpedaled pretty quickly after that. I couldn't help but smile. Thanks for the heads up. No problem. Also, a couple of colleagues at Embl Tech are looking for help. They wanted to know who's advising us now. You good with me passing along your info? Are you kidding? I said. Absolutely. By 2:30 p.m., I was on a Zoom call with the director of strategy at Embl Tech. They were going through a restructuring and had just let go of their previous consulting firm due to misalignment. We spoke for about 40 minutes. She mentioned they'd have a draft contract for me by Monday. When I ended the call, I noticed a new voicemail, Dean. I listened. Ava, this is Dean. I'd really appreciate a chance to speak today. Not about the past, about alignment. There may be a way for us to move forward that works for everyone. I deleted it. Alignment was the word he used when he pushed me out. And now he wanted it back. At 4:05 p.m., Julia called me from her personal number. Ava, she said quickly, you didn't hear this from me, but Veriton Capital pulled out. That caught me off guard. What? What happened? The private equity group that was looking at Hartley and Knox, they'd been in talks for months. They had conditions. They wanted to see strong client retention and continuity. With you gone and all this fallout, they pulled their offer this morning. I leaned back, stunned. That's what this was about, I whispered. They never said it outright, Julia replied. But yeah, they were trying to make the firm look leaner, remove what they saw as bottlenecks, consolidate power. You were too connected to too many clients. So they cut me loose, I said softly, thinking the clients would stay. Except they didn't. No, I replied. They didn't. That night, I made one final call to Gerald Mercer, the COO who had cautioned me not to escalate things. He picked up on the second ring. Ava, he started. I heard about Veriton, I said. Must have been a tough call. There was a pause. You don't have to do this, he said quietly. I'm not doing anything you didn't set in motion, I responded. You took a gamble. You lost. I just stepped aside and let it happen. He sighed. You could come back. We could. No, I interrupted. You had 11 years to value what I built, and you threw it away for a younger face and a cheaper signature. It's over. He didn't say anything. I continued. Tell Dean I won't be at his 3 o'clock meeting. I've got my own clients now, and unlike yours, they trust me. Then I ended the call. 3 weeks after being let go, I had more client contracts than Hartley and Knox's top 3 consultants combined. It didn't happen because I asked. It happened because people chose me, not out of pity or a need for revenge, but because I delivered results. Because I answered calls after 8 p.m., remembered the details no CRM could capture, and made sure they never had to repeat themselves. Trust doesn't come from a logo. It comes from consistency. And they finally saw the difference. By the second month, my LLC had grown faster than I'd anticipated. Too fast, really. Priya was now full-time, and I had just brought on another project coordinator, Marcus. A bright, kind person I'd mentored years ago, who left the corporate world 6 months before. We worked from a small co-working space in River North. No grand corner offices. No sweeping boardroom views. Just 3 desks, great coffee, and focused efficiency. Cascade committed to a full year. Easton brought on a second project. Emble entered a 3-month strategic partnership with plans to expand. And the emails kept pouring in. Subject: referral from Alex Garner. Subject: are you still accepting clients? Subject: can we talk? I need someone I can rely on. I turned down more work than I took on. Not because I was arrogant, but because I had a purpose. I wasn't trying to build an empire. I was building something sustainable. Something that was mine. Something they couldn't take from me again. Then one morning I checked LinkedIn and saw the announcement. Hartley and Knox announces leadership shakeup. Dean Harper will step down as managing director, effective immediately. The firm is entering a restructuring phase after significant client losses. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Not out of joy. Not out of triumph. Just silence. He was gone. Just like that. The man who told me I wasn't the right fit for the company anymore. The man who believed he could replace trust with charm. The man who handed me a folder across a polished desk, thinking I'd walk away quietly, fade into obscurity. He didn't see it coming. Because men like Dean never do. That afternoon, a courier delivered an envelope to my door. No return address. Inside was a handwritten note. Ava, you were right. They weren't just your clients. They were your relationships. And I never understood the difference. I hope you build something better than we ever did. You already have. Dean. I folded the note and placed it in my drawer. Not out of sentiment. Out of closure. Some lessons don't need a response. 3 days later, I stood on stage at the Women in Leadership Summit, an event I'd once attended from the back row. Now I was the closing speaker. The topic: when your value isn't recognized, and why it doesn't matter. I told my story plainly. No bitterness. No tone of revenge. Just facts. I spoke about the consequences when companies prioritize image over impact. When they measure newness by age rather than insight. When they trade consistency for temporary flair. I closed with this. One day, you might find yourself across the table from someone who no longer values you. Don't panic. Don't beg. Just smile, shake their hand, and walk away with everything they never saw you build. Your name, your reputation, your principles. Because some things aren't printed on business cards. They're etched in the trust of others. The applause was long and standing even. But what mattered more was what happened next. 6 women came up to me, tears in their eyes. 2 asked if they could learn under me. 1 was planning her exit from a firm that had drained her for years. Another offered to invest if I ever thought about scaling. And 1 woman, quietly in her 50s, simply said, "Thank you. I really needed that." I nodded. Me too. Later that evening, back in my apartment, I poured a glass of red wine and gazed out at the city. Same skyline, same streets. But everything had changed. Not because I won, but because I no longer needed to. I had outgrown the spaces that once tried to confine me. And the people who once defined me now watched from the sidelines, trying to grasp how they'd lost so much by letting go of just one person. I pulled out the quote Priya had framed for me when I signed my 6th client. The best revenge is doing exactly what they thought you never could. I placed it on the shelf behind my desk. Not as a warning, but as a reminder. Because the world doesn't reward noise. It rewards value. And now, mine would never be questioned again. Thanks for reading. See you in the next chapter. Stay amazed.